One of the questions that I get quite frequently is, what is earnest money? You put down typically 1 to 2% of the purchase price of the home that shows the seller that you're an earnest buyer. And that money is yours. It's a credit to you at closing. But the most important thing with earnest money is that if you walk away from that house and you are outside of any contingencies associated with your purchase and sale agreement, that money can go to the seller. So as real estate agents, we would never allow anyone's earnest money to be at risk. During your due diligence period, which is the previous video, if you haven't watched that, please do so. But during your due diligence period, you will have a certain number of days to put down your earnest money, which we have to show the seller and the seller's real estate agent that we in fact are holding that money. What you don't want to do is change your mind outside of your due diligence period or any contingencies. If you change your mind, that money goes to the seller. But also keep in mind that I'd like to think about it is, if you put $5,000 down in earnest money, you just paid off $5,000 of your house, because you get credit that back to you at closing, and you'll see it on your settlement statement. But earnest money is designed to show the seller that you're an earnest buyer and intend to purchase the home.
When you talk to your lender before you go under contract, he'll say this is going to be approximately how much it's going to cost you to buy this house. And like Dan said, when you're put down $5,000, that number drops by $5,000 before the closing. So it's kind of like an installment almost, to make it a little less scary when you get to the closing table that you're wiring $50,000.
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot is earnest money, like, is that a one-time fee? And so that's not, especially with first-time home buyers, it's like, no, it's a part of, basically it's a part of your down payment.
Yeah.
Right? It goes towards your down payment.
Yeah. It's your money unless you're outside of your contingencies. Yeah. Then it becomes the seller's money.
So I always tell my sellers, conversely, the buyers are putting down that earnest money so that if they, wig out and decide that they're not going to the closing on the day of closing, and next thing you know, they can't be found, that is what the seller is going to get to compensate them for the fact that this buyer walked out on the deal.
Yeah.
So if you're a seller, you want to make sure that that earnest money is enough to compensate you for the fact that you may have already moved out of the house.
Moved out, took your house off the market,
put your stuff in storage.
You get the house professionally cleaned, and you've got to make sure your 4-year-old puts their toys away 17 times a day to let buyers in. So it's a big thing.
In the Georgia contract, it says that your only compensation is that earnest money. So I've oftentimes told my buyers, especially if they're buying a house that is popular, maybe there's other offers, we're going to protect your earnest money as a buyer. We're not going to let you lose your earnest money. So unless you just freak out and don't show up to closing, we can't help you there. If you want to make your offer stand out, and this is just something that we do, and we don't see a lot of other agents do this, put down more earnest money than the average buyer. Because that's going to show the seller that you're earnest, like you're serious, you're not kidding around. So.
Yeah, you're willing to risk more than A, B, and C buyer because you really, really want this property. And I think a lot of times I get my sellers that'll ask me like, well, can I get out of this contract? Sellers don't really have a lot of power in a Georgia contract. And I think the earnest money is really their only
recourse.
Yeah, recourse, or like grounds to stand on if something were to happen, because a buyer can at all times decide, I don't want to buy this house anymore, whether they lose their earnest money or they're still in due diligence. But a seller can't just decide, I don't want to sell.
Yeah.
Because they can sue you for that. So.
Right.
Well, that's the seller's only recourse is the earnest money. But if you're serious about buying the house and you really, really want that house, then I would say put down the most amount of earnest money. We'll get through inspections. We'll get through the due diligence period. Yeah. We'll get through that. That's what a good real estate agent helps you do.
Yeah, I think during the height of it all, I went as high as 5% with a client on earnest money during the craziness that we went through the past 2 years. Just because during that time there were so many offers, and the only thing I guess the seller could see is, well, if somebody backs out, then out of these 5 right here, they give me the most money.
One thing too about us is a lot of agents get really busy and they've got 100 clients and they can't keep up with everything, but we pay super good attention to every single one of our clients, whether we've got 100 at a time or one.
Some agents have no clients and they can't keep track of them.
That too. But I think as us, our personality, like, I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I don't think any of us would be able to sleep if a buyer lost even $1,000. Yes, it's a little bit more risky to put down 2-3%, but I promise you, we've got your back.
What questions do you have about real estate? Drop us a comment or shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a phone call, and we're going to be answering all your questions throughout this video series.
And there's some more videos that we've done too. So make sure to check out the playlist over here for any other questions that you may have.